Was the Acropolis of Athens built before or after Atlantis sank?
We believe it was constructed before, but not much earlier. Also was later altered and restored, so to speak, much later
Okay.
by the Hellenic people.
Um, do you know who taught the Greeks about democracy and theater? I mean, I'm guessing the Anunnaki didn't teach them about democracy.
Well, many of the Anunnaki races you might consider such have much different structures, some of them as what you consider a democratic government, correct? Some of them, they picked those democratic ideas also as from earlier Egyptian experiments, but many of those constructions of governments were also considered a degeneration of earlier aristocracy. It was simply something that flipped in there, so to speak. Yes?
Okay.
Obviously, there were different structural elements that built the civilization. So earlier, it was a completely different genetic makeup of the population that had a democratic structure where people simply were governing themselves compared to an oligarchy or an aristocracy at different junctures, which was simply established due to a certain, what you might consider, genetic hierarchy among those that already lived there, yes, and the invaders.
Okay. So, do you know where they learned theater from?
Likely members of the Federation taught them that.
Okay. Now,
But, of course, your term Anunnaki often refers to different groupings that landed there, so some of them you might consider Aries, Aries, and others not.
right.
But likely they were all human or at least mammalian at this point. We certainly didn't give them any such teachings.
Okay. Um, so the culture of Sparta seems to me anyway to be much more similar to the Empire, such as their practice of eugenics and their emphasis on having a strong military in which every citizen was required to serve. Were they in fact influenced more by the Empire than the Federation?
More or less, yes. As you're aware of, there are certain wars between what you are considering now the gods, and of course that also refers to certain cross between us and the Empire, us and the Federation, and of course the idea being that some of the gods simply had a quarrel over each other and they sent their armies into the field that they simply recruited from the population down there, and obviously was a greater influence on Sparta from us than the Erythraeans. But this was at a particular point in time when we already did not have that much more open interaction with the population anymore.
Okay,
Also, the idea of eugenics, for example, was practiced in most ancient cultures, not just Sparta. They were just more adamant about it.
okay. Uh, do you know who Zeus was really? Is this just another name for Enlil?
From we're aware of that's the same individual indeed, yes.
Okay,
And obviously also some of your modern day attributions of certain teachings from your Bible, Torah, Quran, etc., also come from this particular person, which was also all rather subsumized in this one God.
do you know why he's associated with lightning and thunder?
Obviously, those were some war like capacities the individual had. Obviously, not necessarily in terms of every thunderstorm being attributed automatically to the person, but what you consider now harm, for example, would be one of the options, but maybe just actual weaponry that might have looked or sounded like thundering to the population down the ground.
Okay, was he like the founder of Greece or something?
Of modern day Greece, perhaps not, but of certain ancient structures, yes. Of
Okay.
ancient Hellas, yes.
Uh, who was Hera? Was she really the wife and sister of Zeus?
Yes, but this is also a story that's also handed down over numerous cultures and civilizations from numerous peoples. That's just the way it went down in the Greece mythology. Other mythological teachings aren't about the same peoples and tell the story somewhat differently, and they're also passed down over and over and over again. some of those events happened much earlier between those peoples.
Right. Now, the Greeks believed that Zeus and Hera were two of the six children of Cronus and Rhea, who themselves were the children of the sky god Uranus and the earth goddess Gaia, and were two of the 12 Titans. First of all, who were Uranus and Gaia?
Much of this is a metaphor from invading forces, so to speak, and those that were chrononers. So the idea, of course, the genetic alteration of the earliest human races that were founded could be considered then the children, yes, of those.
Okay.
So you could, for example, consider Uranus then the Anunnaki, for example, but the very general broad term. There were many civilizations that have not been recorded, the records have been wiped out, so it's different for us to reference this to you at all.
Okay. So was Cronus really overthrown by Zeus and his siblings during a 10-year war?
Likely much more longer lasting war, but yes, there was a chain of dynasties. That was also conflict for we were within the Federation, so we were not directly involved as such.
Okay.
Or at least by civilization that later joined the Federation. Here as monkeys, at least.
Do you know if Cronus is another name for Anu?
Very possible.
Okay.
All Anunnaki politics, so to speak, and in this particular case, a certain race that created certain offspring became the Hellenic people later on, and then they became independent from their superiors, and also you were already told earlier to you numerous times the idea of then the whole foundation of new races after one race established their own gene splicing program, and that just then goes further and further down the bloodline.
Okay. So, Greek mythology says that the Cronus or Anu person was imprisoned in the dungeon Tartarus. Do you know if this is based on anything factual?
Yes, this individual was indeed jailed.
So, what is Tartarus and where is it?
Like it was reached underground.
On Earth, you mean?
In Earth, yes, in Earth.
Okay. Um, so is
Which
Anu.
is also where many of your modern day stories of hell or demonic beings underground come from, and this being a place of torture.
Okay. Um, so is the Cronus or Anu person still there today?
No, has since been released.
Okay.
Similar to, for example, your Loki person from the Germanic mythology and many other beings from your mythologies all over your planet have one way or another been jailed down there, many also in Antarctica.
Okay.
This ritual being underground for we're aware of the Tartarus.
Right. So what were the Titans anyway? I mean, were they just ordinary people or was there anything supernatural about them?
And they're an experiment, yes. And they're very tall, obviously.
So did they have
Many
any
of them, yes.
did they have any supernatural powers or anything like that?
From your current perspective, likely, yes. If you were to call it supernatural, obviously their strength was supernatural compared to the more primitive human beings. They might have also had greater psychic senses. But that's not really supernatural, just might appear as such to your beings today because you forgot about your own abilities.
Right. Um,
Many of them were redheads, as you're calling such today.
okay. So Zeus and Hera are two of the 12 Olympians, which were sort of a level below the Titans. Did the other Olympians like Apollo and Hermes and Aphrodite and Ares really exist?
All of those beings exist, yes. Not necessarily the same way you think of, but yes, they existed. Some of water.
Okay.
The relationships between those beings aren't necessarily exactly the same as they're being narrated.
Right. So why are they associated with Mount Olympus? Did they really live there?
Yes, but mostly ships land there, took off and on. Some were longer stationed there, much as was described above Mount Olympus, actually about a spaceship that was parked there.
So are all of the Titans and Olympians still alive today?
Likely the Titans are no longer alive. Many of them are what you consider stasis chambers, yes. Others are dead. Others might still be living. Referring particularly to the Titans here, to the Earth's monkey beings of their bloodlines, they might have passed on their genes if those individuals are also alive, we're certain, but their bloodline certainly is.
Okay. Who was Hades, the so called god of the dead and the king of the underworld, in reality?
Well, and remember of a certain bloodline that was given certain regions also underground, yes? It was just like Tartarus, but not a region. And obviously it was not necessarily a dungeon, it was, well, get a bad rap, so to speak, from what we perceive. Originally it was simply another region that was governed over by this particular person that was given such a realm to reign over.
Right. Did he really have a three-headed guard dog, Cerberus?
There are certain experiments that resulted in such beings, yes. But it's not like they were best buddies and you just roamed around it all the time. It was just one of the beings that were being created and stayed alive. Others died off. It was also created by some of the so-called Illuminati groupings, but at this particular time, of course, a completely different group than what the Illuminati is today, but something like the Illuminati is today that existed back then that interfered with genetics after they were taught certain things by the gods. And they were just tampering around with genetics without knowing what they were doing.
Okay. Who was Medusa?
Another member of this larger royal family structure, and also obviously somebody with certain abilities.
So could she really turn people who looked at her into stone?
Not necessarily because she was so god awfully ugly, since she was just not a hairless monkey, so otherwise you would all constantly turn to stone, right? But really, there are years there was a certain technology by which people could be turned into stone or such, or rather bodily structure would be altered, the molecules would be restructured similar to your what you're aware of from your science fiction and your replicators, yes? Something can simply be turned into this case into food by electronical means, correct? To put it very primitively, of course more complicated than that, but that's how it usually is portrayed in your sci-fi, correct?
Right.
So the idea is simply in this case the molecule of a body could be altered to turn to a stone-like substance. But then not just by looking at her, she actually had to have this effect consciously.
Okay. And did she really have living snakes in place of her hair and the lower body of a snake and wings like she's usually depicted?
She had strong reptilian genetics, yes. Not necessarily snakes' hair, it's like the more an alteration or a metaphor. But yes, she liked snakes. She surrounded herself with living snakes, and she obviously had strong reptilian genes. So you might perhaps look at a vampire, for example, that might, in your mind's eye, might look similar to that. However, there's also the scaly skin, a hybrid, what you might call such. Yes,
Right. So what about the did she have a lower body of a snake or wings?
not the lower body, but she had a tail, she had scales, she had certain claws, but she still had something like legs
Okay.
and vestigial wings.
Okay. Is she still alive?
For we're aware of, yes. Could her also be a descendant. Many of those hybrids survived, but the Empire never considered them fully reptilian, so we didn't bother. Many of what's very important to human mythology and gods or to the Empire or our structures out here was just a failed experiment down there.
Right. Okay. So, was there anything special about the philosophers Socrates or Plato? Like, for example, were either of them part of the royal Anunnaki bloodline or star seeds?
Certainly, some of the bloodlines were passed down, and certainly were royal in their own understanding. And many of your philosophers were what you consider starseeds, but it depends really how you want to stretch that term, because many incarnate your planet have lived somewhere else, therefore they could be considered starseed. It just depends if they're incarnate with a fully conscious memory or if they're being sent there voluntarily, etc., etc., how far you want to stretch that term.
Okay.
And many of them were simply given instructions from other civilizations that they were being passed on. For example, eugenics idea, or how to structure the ideal state, which Plato largely copied from Atlantis.
Okay. Now about the Battle of Thermopylae. Do you know if this was really 300 Spartans against 1 million Persians?
That's grossly exaggerated. There are obviously several such battles. However, likely they were simply a minority fighting against the majority, but not necessarily that much of a difference. There, of course, could have been battles like this. It's not completely unrealistic, but like the heroism is blown out of proportion by those that write around on the story.
Right.
But yes, they were brave warriors, even from our perspectives, and yes, they often withstood a much greater majority in their invader invasion happened, and they managed to at least send the invaders off for somewhat user time.
Okay. All right. Well, Kalask, that answers most of my questions. I really just have one more question, or not even really a question, more of a request. Yeah, you probably know where I'm going with this. Yeah, in the movie
Yes, certainly.
yeah, the movie 300, there's a scene where a guy yells, "This is Sparta!" And it's been like spoofed and like imitated like by 1 million different people. And like I was thinking it would be funny to hear what the Kalask race sounds like saying the line. So come on, Kalask, can you say it for me? It'll entertain the hairless monkeys listening. Come on, say it, Kalask.
One more. This is task.
Come on. Okay, well, I guess that was close enough.
We're not going to identify our collective with a random hairless monkey grouping on Earth, even if we're honoring their abilities for a certain warfare structure that, after all, was also copied off of larger teachings from the Empire. But yes, we certainly appreciate human beings being more on this particular frequency range, and it makes it easier for us to interface with them. Nonetheless, we are Karask.
Right, right. All right, well, cool. Bravo. Very funny.